Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the very first Women in Politics #AskHer podcast series. My name is Maria Rango, and I am a board member of Women in Politics. The 2020 #AskHer campaign was launched by Women in Politics to help encourage women to consider running for office at any upcoming election at any level of government. So we're interviewing women who have either been elected or have run for office to offer their advice and experience to inspire women to enter the race. We want to achieve the goal of having more women's voices at the decision-making table. And today we have the pleasure of welcoming Elizabeth Peloza, the City Councillor of Ward 12 here in London, Ontario, to tell us a little bit about her experience. So welcome.
Perfect, thank you for having me.
Well, tell me a little bit about what inspired your decision to run.
Yeah, I'm a first-term city councillor here in London. I had been involved in politics behind the scenes for about a decade, both provincially and federally, doing election organizing and candidate recruitment and screening. And just for me, I knew my children are small and I didn't want to leave town to serve, so municipal politics was the right fit for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And really, what was one of the biggest hurdles that you felt you had to overcome, or that you felt within your commitment to run at the beginning? I know you mentioned a little bit about wanting to stay home, but from there.
Yeah, I want to focus locally. So for me, ward councillor was the position I was interested in. Also a busy mom of three and involved in different volunteerism opportunities in the community, so working on those. But one of the major hurdles was money. I'm quite comfortable at asking for money for different charities and not-for-profits. Was even great at asking for the fundraising ask at other female candidates events that I attended, and they asked me to do that, but it ended up being completely horrible at being able to do it for myself. And eventually someone pulled me aside and said, "You are a great product. Like, you are a great investment. Like, don't ever hesitate asking for money to support what you need to do in our community."
And why did you feel like it was so difficult for you to ask for money for yourself, but not as much for other organizations that you were involved in?
It's a great question. I don't know if it's just that you're asking for money for yourself. I'm always more of a giver and a doer behind the scenes, making sure everyone else has what they need. Also very frugal and can make a lot go a long way, but definitely to run a campaign, you need the money. I'd already started saving up money years in advance for that. I knew there'd be a little nest egg there to put into my own campaign. But next time I run, I'm really looking forward to doing the ask a little bit better and hoping that people will come forward more willingly with the financial contributions that every campaign needs.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I guess in addition to maybe the economic cost of the campaign, was there anything that surprised you on your campaign trail?
Yeah, there's been plenty of male candidates I've supported in the past, even being a campaign manager for some of them. At different levels of government, did that for male candidates, but some of the feedback at the doors that you got as a mom, like, you'd say, "I'm a neighbor and I'm a mom," and they'd say, "Well, where's your kids? Who's taking care of them?" And with male candidates, I've never heard of one getting that of like, "Where's your kids? Like, who has them if you don't?" But as women, I certainly got that, and my oldest child's actually a male. And people say, "Well, it's not fair that you'd put the responsibility of raising your children onto your son." But no one would ever question if my daughter was the one babysitting. But for some reason, I was judged when it was my son taking care of his siblings for a short period of time.
Well, I find that's something that, yes, within politics and a lot of other areas, women tend to face this really like a double burden of the public versus private sector in their lives. How were you sort of able to personally overcome that? Like, what sort of mentally, more than anything, of being like okay with pursuing your dream as well?
Yeah, it's really becoming careful that you don't need other people to validate yourself. For me, I deflect with humor. In that case, I would just tell a resident, like, yeah, I left the decoy snack at home. The kids did their chores. They're actually glad I'm not home because it's unsupervised screen time for video games. I'm close to home, but, a person really shouldn't have to go through all that to validate what's allowed you to be out of the house. I had another issue when a person was putting up a campaign sign and a resident was questioning it. And it was like, well, the volunteer come back and it was the question of, well, is she hot? And it's like, does it matter? It's just what, and I said, for how many campaign signs I've put up across Southwestern Ontario, no one's ever rolled up before putting up a man sign to be like, is your candidate hot? Like, it's just never happened.
Yeah. Well, and to sort of combat these issues that you're sort of facing even from the beginning of your campaign, what do you think would be a strategic way to help like combat those? Like, would it be a lot more like education, getting more women involved, or how could you get the community to really sort of change this, like, I guess, social like vision and stereotypes? Yeah. Would you suggest? I know it's a very big question.
Big question, an important one, and I think that's when we're back to the ask her campaign, that we need women behind the scenes to run, recognizing it took me years. I've been asked along the way, including by different party leaders, if I'd run for their party. But it was becoming really, for me, behind the scenes comfortable, that I knew how a campaign worked. I knew what to expect. I knew what door canvassing took. I knew what the money and the finances were going to be and how to do and ask. And for me, like, I needed to know that I had that control in my campaign before I was comfortable to step up front. So as a candidate, the last time, it was great that lots of women come out and they're engaged, just because there is a female candidate and we're usually lower represented, that they're out on the campaigns too. And I'm like, what skill do you want to learn here to take on to the next campaign? Like, we need more women campaign managers and volunteer managers. Like, every section of the campaign, we just need more women in those places, and having the skill set that you can teach more women to come up behind you and ideally take our places or stand beside us around the horseshoe or at any level of government.
That's wonderful. So what do you find that supports that you have received have been the most helpful or important to you? Either both as a woman through the politics or just in being in the office itself?
Yeah, for me, in the beginning, I reached out to another former female city councillor to ask about what their experience was and asking how those women ran the work-life balance. And when you're out, people do come up and they'll give you peace in their mind. And you're like, I'm with my kids. Like, can you make an appointment? And asking how they found it. And one of the warnings I got in the beginning was, imposter syndrome, that you finally earned your spot at the table. But do you really belong here? Because it's not like you're inundated with people like you when you enter this space. So being aware of that and dealing with that, and just really surrounding yourself with other women and other levels of government who you can just have that talk to candidly and confidentially of, like, this is the issue that I'm having, or have you encountered in this? Like, how does one even deal with it? I found that really, really helpful, and women who don't always share the same political view or standpoint of view, where you can have that communication, as women do communicate differently, of just that open, as women, like, on different sides, like, I need to understand your thoughts before I can see the other side, consider it, and make the best decision possible.
Well, very nice. And for these sort of kinds of supports that you have now had and you can see, do you think that, how do you think they could possibly be implemented for those women that maybe are just considering running? Or could there be any program set up to show that, hey, look, these are probably some of the barriers you're going to encounter, and these are some of the resources that you can have?
Yeah, there's the mentorship program through King's for Women in Civic Leadership. So making the time to volunteer as a mentor in their programs. That's something I've done for the last couple of years and consider that to be a privilege. Some women will write us one-on-one of just, hey, I'm considering stuff, I'm in political science, who might I connect with, and having those lists that we can connect with of come and experience some stuff in the office, or do you want to do a community event with me, or reaching out to other women that they can focus on or work with, and recognizing women in politics. I've certainly sent other women that way, and just even sometimes following online to see what the strong women are doing, or organizations that empower women, like to start there and see where it might be of interest.
That's wonderful. That's good advice. So I guess going from that, sort of what advice or guidance would you offer a woman who is just starting to think about running for political office or just getting some interest in politics?
To know
some like key advice, I guess.
Know your self-worth, and just you really have to know who you are and why you're doing it. Because even for me, like sometimes you think that women would be the biggest components of building yourself up, and sometimes they're the ones coming to you and saying, are you sure you really want to run? Maybe you want to run for a school board trustee first. And just knowing like why you pick something, and that nobody talked you into it, just you knew that you had as much value as anybody else stepping up to offer, that whatever lived experience you have counted just as much as somebody else's, that if you have college or just high school, like it's fine. You don't have to have a university degree, that it really is knowing your community and what you bring to the table. For me, college educated twice over, no university degree hanging on my wall here. And I was actually unemployed going into this. I was a stay-at-home mom, extensive volunteer work in our community. And that was an awkward question at the door, recognizing that in society, sometimes we judge each other based on your title or your monetary value of your income earning potential. So when you're on a doorstep and they're like, what do you do for a job? And you're like, actually, this is what I do in my community. And you get, oh, you don't work. No, that much volunteerism in the community is a lot of work, just I don't get paid for it in a monetary system. And just being completely comfortable with claiming that space.
Oh, that is wonderful. It's really actually very inspiring to sort of see you as that role model of determinants, and like you had a dream and you knew what you wanted, and despite all the backlash that you might have received and all those challenges, that is actually very inspiring. That is amazing. I really applaud you as someone that has really studied politics and loves the area. I'm very glad that there's someone like you representing parts of the city.
Thank you.
Those are, yeah, I'm not sure if there was anything else that you might want to share with us today.
Yeah, whatever question you might ever think is off limits at the door, or comments in passing, know that it's not, that as a woman running, you'll get everything from questioning you as a mother of your lack of responsibility and those designated duties, to, you know, wearing a blouse one day that your shoulders were showing, to a male asking if you'd sleep with him. You really do get it all at the doors and through social media and through work emails. Still some odd things come through of just like, you need to be really confident in who you are and that you've earned this spot, and we really do need more women filling these spots. Our committees, each standing committee of council has 5 members. Sometimes those committees are all male. There's only 4 women. As awesome as it would be to even have half of us fill a committee, like, we don't even have the numbers now to fill a whole committee of women. And I would love to see the day where it's not like that. And we'll get there, just we need to do more with bringing each other up. for the most part, my male colleagues have been really great, which I appreciate, those open conversations and them making space for the conversations when they have an idea, and them being open to, have you considered how this idea affects women or women and children and what this space looks like, recognizing they don't have the same experiences of us, and based on what they would have for a partner or what other female friends or family would have shared with them. Sometimes we don't always share how we're impacted by decisions, which is important too, positive and negatively, to make sure that those in decision-making privileged positions know how it actually is affecting people. When I knocked on doors, we were talking about bus rapid transit at the time and what it could mean, and taking the time to tell neighbors that, as if you're the caregiver picking up children, some daycares charge you for every minute you're late. And if that bus is late, that parent, most likely a mother, is going to be late and have to pay more. And if that mom's using their time to use the bus to go back and forth to school, they already don't have an income. And now they're actually paying because they're late getting their children. And it's another barrier to re-entering the workforce. Once you started to break down, like, this is what your neighbors have told me, and they've allowed me to share it, like, it just changes the perspective that people are just like, I never knew it was impacting women like this, or that's how daycares went. Just, if they're not in charge of the children, they don't know. So it's important to make space for those side conversations of how our decisions actually impact certain groups.
Oh, that's wonderful. No, thank you very much again for all your insight and all your time to really get down to maybe those topics that are not that often discussed within just our community, because even within women, like you mentioned, women to women themselves, sometimes we're not our biggest supporters, and that is something that really does need to be talked about. And so thank you very much for bringing that to light into this conversation. And I do hope that we could keep in touch through Women in Politics through this campaign process, and we go from there. Thank you for everything and all your advice.
Thank you.